Tennessee football will retain some annual rivalries and dabble with others. It's all part of the SEC's new scheduling format, which begins in 2026. And on that note, who will the Vols quarterback be for that 2026 season? We're here to talk about that and much, much more. Welcome to the Volunteer State. I'm Tennessee beat writer Adam Sparks, along with John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. Let's get to the SEC schedule news first, John, and then we'll shift over to the QB question, Jake Merklinger, George McIntyre, Faison Brandon, and all that talk. That's a little later. Let's get to the SEC schedule news first. On Tuesday night, the SEC will formally announce 3 permanent opponents and 6 rotating opponents, which will fill the conference football schedules for the next 4 seasons for each school. That show airs at 7 p.m. Eastern Tuesday on SEC Network and ESPN2. But the word has already leaked out, at least the part about the 3 permanent opponents. We're recording this late afternoon on Monday. By the time that you hear this, you may already know the full schedule, but you for sure are going to know the 3 permanent opponents for each team because we already know those. Tennessee will play Alabama, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt every season, at least for the next 4 years, and then the SEC will reevaluate things after that. So Bama, Kentucky, Vandy every season, and then the Vols will rotate the remaining opponents 6 at a time, home and away, meaning you'll play every SEC team twice over a 4-year period, at least twice. Again, home and away. So, John, we knew Tennessee would get Alabama and Vandy. Alabama's a longtime rival. Vandy is the state rival. But there was a chance, at least at one point, the UT could have gotten Florida for that 3rd spot or South Carolina in that 3rd spot. Georgia's a regional rival. Auburn is an older traditional rival to some extent. But Tennessee got Vandy, Kentucky, Bama. This is only good news for Tennessee, right, John?
Yeah, it couldn't come out of this any better. I mean, you're getting 2 of the worst programs in the SEC in Kentucky and Vanderbilt, 2 programs that you've dominated for many, many decades. So, yeah, that was a best case scenario. I knew Vanderbilt, as you said, I knew Vanderbilt and Alabama. That would be a cinch. But I didn't know about Kentucky. I think Tennessee is probably Kentucky's biggest rival, but when you list Tennessee's rivals, I don't think it looks at Kentucky as big a deal as Kentucky looks at Tennessee. And part of that has to do with Tennessee's dominance in the series. But I just thought Florida versus Tennessee, to me, that's a huge loss if you're talking about you want to lament lost rivalries because it was such a big deal in the 1990s when the league went to divisional play, and those teams were clearly the best of the SEC East year after year. So that's a loss. And Tennessee, Georgia, because of proximity, like Kentucky, a border rival, and Georgia's such a good team right now, so successful. It's a game that's produced a series that's produced some really good games. So those were possibilities. But if you'd asked Tennessee, well, what would you like? What would you be? What 3 teams do you want? It would have taken those 3, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. You obviously would not ever want to get rid of Alabama, especially where things are at now. I mean, Tennessee is under Josh Heupel. They're 2-2 against Alabama. Win at home, lose on the road. Nick Saban's not there anymore. So you want to keep that. You want to keep that rivalry with Alabama, absolutely. Kentucky and Vandy, Heupel is 4-0 against both of those. The Kentucky, here's how I say this. On the field, you can make a case that Kentucky or Vandy can be competitive with Tennessee any given season. Obviously not regularly, but any given season. But I just think there is a psychological edge that Tennessee has over both of those programs and that's what you want when you're talking about a team that you're going to play every year. It's not, if you're just talking about within a year, sometimes sometimes Florida can have a better team than Tennessee. Sometimes Tennessee can have a better team than Alabama or whatever. But if you're talking about a wide scope of things, you want to play teams that you feel like you have a psychological edge over them without seeing their roster or their coach or anything. And for Tennessee, I think that's Kentucky and Vandy. Um, Kentucky, when you pencil that one in at the beginning of the year, you think that's a W. Vols will win that game. They'll win home. They'll win road. I mean, Josh Heupel's actually had a couple of games where that was a one-score game, and you still felt pretty good that Tennessee was going to win the game, and they did. Um, you always hear from Kentucky fans after that game, when are we ever going to beat Tennessee? Because it does feel like a huge mountain that they can't quite get over. They won one game a number of years ago, but it's just not where either program is at right now. Vandy actually had recent success. Before Heupel got here, Vandy had won, I think it was 5 out of 9. Had a couple in the early 2010s, I think 12 and 13. They won those. 2016 to 2018, won 3 in a row under Derek Mason. But once Heupel got to Tennessee, that's sort of been over. It really has been over. And so in the climate that we're in now, you think Alabama's a coin flip, Kentucky's a win, Vandy's a win. And there's not many trios that you could line up that made sense that would have put Tennessee in that spot. By the way, John and Blake Topmeyer have a SEC podcast where they discuss all these teams and all the different trios that they got for their permanent opponents. Now Tennessee's going to get 6 other rotating opponents. They're going to get 5 home games next year in the conference. We know that because Danny White has already leaked that. John, without knowing who those teams are going to be, I mean, I still think this season is probably the more favorable, manageable schedule that Tennessee's going to have in the next few years. Am I right in assuming that?
Oh, definitely. I think Tennessee got a really good break on the interim schedule. You look at all the teams that didn't play in this 2-year period, and the schedule was basically the same, except home and away within the conference. So you're going to 9 games in the SEC. You know your schedule will be tougher. And also, Tennessee's going to pick up a tougher non-conference opponent, I think, in Georgia Tech. Will be better than its Syracuse and NC State the previous 2 years. So, yeah, I think it's got to be tougher. We look at it and we say, boy, you've got those teams every year, Vanderbilt and Kentucky. Sure, that's a plus, but that means you won't have one of those teams as a rotating opponent. So when your 6 teams come in and year out, it's not going to make it any easier. So I just think Tennessee's schedule overall, despite having the benefit of playing Kentucky and Vanderbilt every year, overall, it's going to have a much tougher schedule now than it did during this interim period.
Yeah, and these, for those that don't know, the way this is supposed to balance out as best as they can do it by, number one, keeping rivalries. Number two, to try to prioritize geographic opponents. So obviously, Vandy and Kentucky geographically makes sense. Alabama's the rival. Vandy and Kentucky are both rivals of different kinds. And you're supposed to try to have a competitive balance with the schedules. Now, that could mean that Tennessee, I think it's fair to assume that Tennessee will get hammered a little bit with those other opponents, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not saying I know exactly the algorithm they use to balance these things out, but you can look at it and say, well, Kentucky, that's a win for Tennessee. Vandy's a win for Tennessee. So we got to go find 2 possible losses or coin flip games. And so that's where you're going to get more competitive games and tougher opponents. John, when we go to this, and again, we're going to this model in 2026. Are we going to see? I mean, Are we going to see 9-3 SEC teams in the playoff beginning next year? I mean, we could see it this year, but is it fair to say that we're probably going to have some 3-loss teams out of the SEC getting the playoff next year simply because they're going to beat up on each other?
Oh yeah, that's surely that will happen. Uh, in part because the SEC seems to have been assured by the NCAA or the College Football Playoff Selection Committee that we're going to really put more import on strength of schedule than say last season, because that was a point of contention with the SEC in deciding whether it's going to a 9-game schedule. It doesn't want to go to a 9-game schedule if they think there's not going to be a great deal of emphasis on strength of schedule. So, yeah, I think the schedule will be stronger, but I think they will look at that much harder. So, I expect to see a 9-3 team in the playoff. And also, there's a possibility, Adam, as you know, that would go to a 16-team playoff. And
Ugh.
you got 16 teams. Surely they'll have a 14 or 16. Surely you'll have a 9-3 SEC team.
I don't want the 16 team. I want a bye. I mean, I'm not for any particular team. I just think you need to play your way to getting a first round bye. And also, well, I mean, I would have been fine with 6 teams or 8 teams. That wouldn't have been a bye with 8, but something like that. Once they got it to 12, I thought it worked out great. I don't want to get beyond that. I don't think you should have teams that are clearly nowhere near as good as the number 1 team be in the playoff. And we're already talking about if you put a G6 team in now, group of 6 team in, that's the 12th team usually. So you're talking about 11 power conference teams. I mean, is 11 anywhere near as good as 1? Boy, that's tough. If you're going to 16, you're stretching that even more. And I think you could water things down if you're putting 16 teams in. I'm sure Tennessee fans would love it if they're number 15 or 16 that get in. But I just think it's sort of what they're talking about in the NCAA basketball tournament of stretching it out to 96 teams or whatever. It's like, well, what's the point of the accomplishment if that many teams get in? I think 12 is fine. They need to stick with 12.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with sticking to 12. I'm not arguing on behalf of an expanded playoff. I just think it's kind of inevitable. Um, but I do think the SEC will be just fine when it comes to playoff bids. Looking at this year's schedule, I really think if Oklahoma could go 9-3, it belongs in the college football playoff. With that schedule, in fact, I could take a 9. If I were just looking at large teams from the SEC, I would favor a 9-3 Oklahoma team over some 10-2 teams within the conference. I think it would be more deserving given the nature of that schedule.
Yeah, and for those, I'll go ahead and answer this because I know we have a number of people that listen to the podcast that also read our stuff and certainly read my mailbag and submit to my mailbag. And I get this question ever since the different scheduling formats have come up: an 8-team, which is a 7-1, or a 9-team, 9-game conference schedule, which is a 6-3, which is what they're going with. Um, I get a number of fans that don't, I guess, quite haven't thought through the math of this with the expanded conference and saying, why do they have to get rid of the Tennessee Florida game? Why get rid of the Georgia game? Why not just keep playing all these? You can't do that. There's too many teams. So three permanents or 3 annuals. That leaves 12 teams. There's 16 teams in the conference. There's 15 besides Tennessee. So you get 3 annuals, and then that leaves 12. You go 6 one year and 6 another year. And we'll see how they divvy that up, if it's back-to-back years or alternating years or whatever. So the schedule that you wanted and having all these rivals all together every year, that was just never going to happen. It's one of these rivalries or a couple of these were going to end. Annual rivalries going to end no matter what. So before you fill up my mailbag with why not just keep it the way it was. The math doesn't math there. I don't
Yeah.
know, John. Do you get that question? Because I do get that question a lot. Why not just keep things the way they are? Well, Oklahoma and Texas came in, and you can't do that. Numbers just don't work
Keeping
out.
things the way they are is just impossible, not just in SEC football, but in life. Everything changes. I won't get too philosophical here, but you just gotta roll with it. I'll really miss the Tennessee Florida rivalry every year, and I'll miss the Tennessee Georgia rivalry every year. However, as you pointed out, it's not as though you won't see these uh, teams for 7 or 8 years. They'll be rotating in and out, and when you have a schedule, a conference with this many teams, man, when you have to go so long without seeing another team, it's almost like they don't even seem like they're a conference opponent. Somebody was saying they don't think A&M and Georgia have played in since A&M came into the league. Is that
Yeah,
possible?
yeah, I think that's right.
Well, I
Or
mean,
maybe they didn't go to each other's place. Maybe I actually no, I think they haven't played yet. Yeah,
I don't
there's
remember a game between them, but see, that's unfortunate. When we had a smaller league, yeah, all schools and all fans had their most hated rivals, but they also had a really good working knowledge of the rest of the conference when it was a 12-team league. They know what it was like. A lot of them know what it's like to go to Starkville, or to go to Auburn, or play at all these different venues. The league was small enough then where you kind of got a good feel for everybody, and there was history. Uh, it's much harder to maintain that in this big a conference. So I like the idea that you see teams more often.
yeah. There was a number of teams there over the past few years. Especially when you go back to divisions that you weren't even is are some of these teams actually in the same conference as
Yeah.
Tennessee? You wouldn't see them, but also you wouldn't go there. John, today I was talking to some of the Tennessee players about dealing with the cowbells at Mississippi State. Obviously, Tennessee plays at Starkville on Saturday, and I knew they hadn't played them recently, so I was trying to think: is there anybody on this team that has played at Starkville before? So I just looked back real quick. When's the last time Tennessee's played Mississippi State a couple times in the last few years? But when's the last time they played at Starkville? Well, I look back, it's 2012. It's 13 years. So
Jeez. I
yeah,
didn't realize it was that long.
so some of these, I mean, some of these freshmen were in kindergarten last time that happened. So it was funny because I asked some of these players about the cowbells, and it's they responded to it like it's some novelty, like it's something that they're gonna take a video and put it on Instagram. Like, hey, look where I am. None of you guys have ever been here before. Like it's a different planet. Deshaun Bishop, Tennessee's running back, said, I'm really curious about what it's like. I've heard them on TV. I've seen videos of them. I want to know what it's like to be at a stadium where 60,000 cowbells are ringing around you. So because none of these guys have played there, they don't know anybody that's played there. Bryson Eason is a 6th-year senior, and he's played at, I think, 10 different stadiums. But it was still he was still in grade school the last time Tennessee played at Starkville. So that doesn't need to happen. That doesn't need to happen for fans either. They need to be able to have sort of a working knowledge of some of these road stadiums and the teams and the traditions and all these sort of things. And I hope that this will do that for them. John, I missed the opportunity for a segue a couple minutes ago when you said nothing stays the same, everything changes, because because what will change when this new SEC schedule arrives is Tennessee's quarterback. As I mentioned, 2026 is when we get this first schedule, 9-game conference schedule. And Tennessee will have a different quarterback, we know, because Joey Aguilar he's here one season, and that's it. That's all the eligibility he has. This may not seem timely, the future at Tennessee's quarterbacks. because we're right in the middle of a season. Tennessee's about to go on the road for its first true road game at Mississippi State. But it's actually timely for, if you look at last week's game and if you read some of my mailbag where Tennessee fans submitted questions. Tennessee beat UAB 56-24 last week. Jake Merklinger played from about midway third quarter to the end of the game as Joey Aguilar's backup. George McIntyre, the freshman, never got in the game. And there was some frustration from some fans that wanted to see both of them. Thought they would. The ETSU game 2 weeks earlier, you got to see both of them. Both of them played plenty in that game, and it just didn't happen in this game. My suspicion is that Josh Heupel wanted to see Merklinger lead a touchdown drive, and once that happened, he would put McIntyre in. He wanted Merklinger to get some success, and that just didn't happen. He was out there 4 drives. Boo Carter's fumble on a muffed punt return, that messed up some of the timing, I think, of getting so many possessions in the second half. So Merklinger got 4 possessions, and McIntyre never got on the field. And there's an assumption, I think, I'd say among media and certainly among the fan base, that Jake Merklinger most likely will not be here next season. That he'll probably be a guy that jumps into the portal. We don't know that. He hasn't said that, but there is a reasonable assumption of that. And if that were to happen, then your next quarterback in line is George McIntyre or Faison Brandon, the 5-star that's supposed to sign in December. So people want to see McIntyre. They've seen Merklinger, for better or worse. They want to see McIntyre. So, John, I mean, let's just make a big assumption and say that Jake Merklinger does jump into the portal at the end of the season because he had his chance to start. Aguilar beat him out. May not be the guy. Should they just say, okay, George McIntyre, highly touted recruit, and Faison Brandon, very highly touted recruit. We're going to go with you 2 young guys and let it roll. Is that the way to go, or should this Joey Aguilar success make them look into the portal and rethink this thing?
Well, I'm already on record with that, Adam. I look at so much college football, and the more I watch, the more I value experienced quarterbacks. Okay, McIntyre and Brandon may both be outstanding young quarterbacks, but they're young quarterbacks. And I look at this year's Michigan team. Michigan has a really good team, I think. Beat Nebraska this past week. But it lost at Norman, Oklahoma. And it was starting a true freshman in Bryce Underwood. Highly acclaimed, big-time player. Everybody raves about his potential, his future, and all that good stuff. He was 9 out of 24 against Brent Venables' defense. Venables is an acclaimed defensive coordinator, great tactician, showed him things he hasn't seen. I value experience so much now. I look what Tennessee got with – it's gone the 5-star route. It went with Nico Yamaleava. And then I watched Joey Aguilar come in here, not even a highly touted transfer, just kind of a, oh, by the way, well, who else you're going to get? It's after spring ball. There's no – I think Tennessee tried to put out feelers to get a more proven quarterback than Aguilar because all Aguilar done is play in the Sun Belt Conference. But he comes in here, doesn't even go through spring ball. He just comes in here, and he looks as though he's been playing in this offense for 4 years. He makes every play you need to make in it. He's demonstrated ability to handle the offense, to hit open receivers, see the field. So I'm becoming less and less enamored with these strong arm superstar quarterbacks coming out of high school. I just don't think it's the way to go. I think you should go in the portal every year and get you a quarterback. Get a proven guy. You could identify one that's running a similar offense that you think his skill set matches a Josh Heupel offense and roll with that. Gosh, I just think that's the way to go.
I mean, so obviously you're taking the sampling that we have of Josh Heupel quarterbacks at Tennessee and using that, right? That's the argument, because Hendon Hooker was the best that they've had, and he was a guy who had started a little bit, had some experience at Virginia Tech, and then you bring him in, fits the offense, works great, breaks a bunch of records. Joe Milton transfer. Um, Now we can agree that was not the best fit. He was serviceable. He was okay. Um, I think Nico was probably third of those three quarterbacks, and he's the 5-star. And then Joey Aguilar comes in and he's really, I'm not saying he's Hendon Hooker yet, but he's been really good. So I guess the sampling tells you the transfer with experience is going to work out. The 5-star is not. Is that enough of a sample though, John? Because I feel like if Nico had stayed this year, none of that nonsense in the offseason would have happened, and he had taken a step forward. Would you still feel this way, or is that sort of the point that you've seen it work out with Joey? So we should assume that's the best. That's the best path.
Well, there's another factor in this, I think, Adam, is because of the transfer portal, because of NIL deals, you may develop a quarterback. Let's just say that George McIntyre and Faison Brandon are they turn out to be everything you had hoped for, that they play up to their recruiting billing. Well, both of them aren't going to stay at Tennessee. So
Right.
you're going to lose one. Um, I just, so what happens is you can end up developing star quarterbacks for somebody else, because if they show enough, then I don't know, maybe somebody else can buy them from out from under you. So I think there's other things to consider, but I watch so much college football. Go back to last year in the national championship game, the two quarterbacks, Riley Leonard, a Duke transfer, quarterbacking Notre Dame. I don't know. He was at Duke for several years. He wasn't the top quarterback. He wasn't projected as a surefire. I forgot where he was drafted, but he wasn't a surefire number one pick,
Mm-hmm.
not that kind of projection, but he's got all this experience. He fits what Notre Dame wants in his quarterback, so he leads it to the national championship game. Ohio State, which gets big time quarterbacks out of high school, but it goes to Kansas State and gets Will Howard, who was there for 4 years, and says, "Okay, we've got all this talent around. We've got a better kid. We see what he can do at Kansas State. We've got a better supporting cast here, so we can project what he would do in this system." You can't be so sure about these high school stars. You can measure their arm, the athleticism, their speed, and all that kind of good stuff, but you don't know how they'll perform at this level, how well they will see the field, how well they will read a defense, how quickly they'll get rid of the ball. You just don't have as much to go by.
Yeah, Josh Heupel has got to be thinking which was harder, getting Joey Aguilar up to speed to run this offense, or trying to do it with a young guy over multiple years. Um, was this just a fluke thing? Just really fortunate, planets aligned, and Joey Aguilar he was the right guy, and you can't count on that happening every offseason? Or is there something about just that experience that he's run a lot of different offenses? He knows he can pick up terminology quicker. He's not rattled in games because he's played in a lot of different levels. There's something to all that. I guess in reality, I don't see Josh Heupel. I would be very surprised if Josh Heupel goes into this offseason and says, "Yep, I'm just going to go with transfers for now on." George, sorry. Faison, sorry. You are going to have to wait a year, or leave, or stay, or whatever. I don't care, because I'm going with a transfer for now on. I don't see that happening. Um, but I'll bet you we would never get Josh Heupel to admit this. But I wonder if you pumped him full of truth serum, if he would say,
Hmm.
"Okay, I'm going to try this one more time. I'm going to try the young freshman signee quarterback, develop him long term. I'm going to try this one more time." because I do have McIntyre, and I think he can be the guy. And I do have a 5-star in Faison Brandon. I think he could be the guy. If it doesn't work this time, then I'll go with the plan to add a transfer. Because he's hitched his wagon to doing it this way, at least for now. He's got Tristan Keys, the number one receiver in the country, coming in part because he has Faison Brandon, 5-star receiver. Actually, 2 5-star receivers. Salisi Moa, who's an athlete, but he'll play receiver, I think. 2 5-star receivers. They're coming in with a 5-star quarterback. Do you get those guys if you get a transfer quarterback? Now, maybe, but the timing doesn't work out because you're signing them, then you're adding the transfer quarterback. So you can't sell that transfer quarterback to recruits. So that's part of it. High-end recruits follow high-end quarterbacks. They usually don't come in because you're getting a transfer from we'll fill in the blank later. So I think that could do some damage to recruiting. And John, I feel like I already know your counterpoint to this. Well, just go get receivers in the portal too, right? Is that where we're going?
Yeah, Adam, I'll admit I try to keep up with the way things are going, and I just think the transfer portal is the way to go. And that's yeah, you don't ignore high school recruits, but I just think it's so important to work that portal and get the best players you can to upgrade your roster. Here's another possibility. How about this? You've got George McIntyre here already.
Mm-hmm.
Faison Brandon is coming. Do you believe that McIntyre or Brandon's your best quarterback? Can you make that determination based on projecting Brandon from high school as opposed to McIntyre from being in your system? I think that's an important evaluation to make.
If I have McIntyre and Brandon, again, we're assuming Jake Merklinger goes in the portal. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
John, if you're telling me at January 2nd, when the portal opens, I have McIntyre based on what I've seen in practice and a little bit in games, and I have Faison Brandon. If those are my 2 quarterbacks, and I can go in the portal and try to get a third, if I have money to spend, which Tennessee does, I feel like for the 2026 season, I can go and get a better quarterback for the 26 season than McIntyre or Brandon to win immediately. And I'm thinking through some of the quarterbacks that Tennessee was trying to get in the portal a few months ago when they ended up with Joey Aguilar. They were close on some. Maybe some of those guys wouldn't have worked out. Maybe they would have. I don't know. But Tennessee was looking at some big fish. And if you go to the January portal, which our understanding is only going to be one portal window this offseason, I think they could go and get a really good quarterback in the portal and have them start immediately and be better immediately, not long term, immediately better than McIntyre and Brandon. So, do you go get a guy who can have you win immediately and potentially sacrifice one of those other guys? Because George McIntyre may think he's the starter. If you go and get a transfer, who's to say you're not going to get a transfer the next year? Are you getting a transfer for 1 year, or does this guy have 2 years left? If that's the case, then you're just inviting McIntyre to go into the portal. So, there's a lot of juggling here. You know, is George McIntyre Peyton Manning, and you're pushing him to the side to go get a quick fix? You know what I mean? I mean, they like him a lot. And Faison Brandon is a 5-star. I know Tennessee got burned by Nico, but Faison Brandon's a 5-star, and athletically he's there, and they like him a lot. So it makes the evaluation outside of games really, really important, because if you don't go get a transfer, then you're saying what we have we think is good enough. And I think that's a gamble to know that either way. So I guess I'm agreeing with you that another quarterback would probably be better than either one of those guys immediately, but I'm not certain about that. And I don't know if the Tennessee coaches will think that or not, because they've seen McIntyre a lot in practice that we haven't.
Well, Adam, if you think Faison Brandon can be better than McIntyre, if you can make that determination, then it's easier to say, Faison, we want you to come in. You're our future quarterback. but we want to break you in a little slower. We don't want to throw you to the wolves right away. We want you to learn the system, learn behind. We're bringing in a one and done guy, senior experienced player, and we will work you in. We may even develop a package for you so you can play as a true freshman. And we think that will be in your best interest to develop as a quarterback here. So that to me, if you believe Brandon has as much potential as McIntyre, then that would make me even more likely to make that move, because McIntyre, you would be asking McIntyre to be a backup for 2 years, whereas
Yep.
you're asking Brandon to just be a backup for one. So that tells me if I think Brandon's can be just as good as McIntyre, then I would be even more likely to go get a transfer.
Yeah, there's different messages. They're subtle, but there's very different messages that you give these quarterbacks depending on what year they are, experience. Because if George McIntyre, if you brought in a transfer quarterback in January with the anticipating that would be the starter or compete to start, you would be giving George McIntyre the message that you just gave Jake Merklinger, which is you can compete for it, but we're not so sure you're going to be good enough, so we're going to bring in another guy. It would be the same message to McIntyre as he just gave to Merklinger. And we think Merklinger may jump into the portal at the end of the year because he received that message in that way. Faison Brandon, it would be a different message. Hey, you're a true freshman. True freshmen usually don't start. We're just bringing in this transfer for a year to get you ready. Sort of what Nico faced with Joe Milton. You're going to be the guy as a redshirt freshman. We're just going to let you get seasoned, behind this veteran for 1 year. And again, it would depend on if a transfer was for 1 year or 2 years. If it's 2 years, you got a whole other mess if they have 2 years of eligibility left. But boy, they do have a big decision to make in what they do. I tend to think they're probably going to go with what they have, because they do really like George McIntyre, and you've got a 5-star coming in, Faison Brandon. They may just say, we think one of these guys will hit, and so we'll let them compete. Now, that brings Jake Merklinger back into it. And again, we're making the big assumption, just for the sake of conversation, that he goes into the portal. We don't know that. But usually in the portal era, that's how this works. Young quarterback, it's happened with Taven Jackson a couple years ago. Young quarterback, looks like he can play at this level, but not so sure he can start at this level as Tennessee's quarterback. And once he gets his opportunity, he gets passed up. I wouldn't say Merklinger's been passed up by McIntyre yet, but you can sort of read the tea leaves that may be where we're headed. And Merklinger got passed up by Joey Aguilar pretty easily. So you would think if Jake Merklinger wants to start somewhere, he would go into the portal and look elsewhere at a mid-major or a low-power 4 school. We've seen him play a couple of times. Maybe I need to play devil's advocate of whether or not Jake Merklinger can have a second life as a starter. John, in my mailbag, I had a UT fan just asked the question, did Jake Merklinger look indecisive against UAB? And I think that's the best word. I don't think he looked bad. I think he looked indecisive. Did that come across to you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. And I read your mailbag, and I thought you did a really nice job of making a case for Merklinger. It's sort of the opposite of a knee-jerk reaction. I had a knee-jerk reaction. You were more thoughtful, broke it down and explained. I thought it was really significant. You brought up the depth in the receiving core. It's not great. So you're bringing in, maybe the talent is there, but you're bringing in new guys. He's having to work with guys who don't know the system that well. So it is challenging. I guess what I look at when I see a backup quarterback, Adam, is someone with promise. I think I look for something that gets my attention, whatever it might be, a quick release, scrambling ability, big arm, uh, strong runner, just a fiery type guy, something. I want to see something. I don't see anything with Merklinger.
I think serviceable is the word.
Okay,
A-
well, sir, yeah,
Yeah, as a guy to run the offense, he is serviceable. As a guy who can throw the ball, he's serviceable. As a guy who can run it a little bit, serviceable. And right, and serviceable is not a good word for it.
it's
It's an okay word for a backup quarterback in a pinch to finish a game. Serviceable is not a good word for a future starter, and that's sort of the feel I get from him. In both games that he's played, ETSU and UAB this year, he was not good right off the bat. He threw what easily could have been a pick six in his first game. It's a bad decision. Threw it the wrong place. Could have been picked off. Was not. Probably because they were playing ETSU. And then he settled in after that. Threw a couple touchdown passes. Of note, he threw one, I think, to Chris Brazel, uh, leading receiver in the SEC right now. And he threw another to Jack Van Dorselaer, their third tight end, a really good tight end. So you see, he threw the ball well when he was throwing to ones and twos. In the UAB game, well, one of the twos at wide receiver, Darius Jackson, was out with an injury. So you were somewhat into freshmen, but you're sort of already into walk-ons as soon as he got out on the field. And so some of the indecisiveness, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt here. Some of the indecisiveness is, does that walk-on know the route he's supposed to run here? Is my protection of this third string left tackle going to hold up? So I think there's a little bit of that. His numbers are pretty good against ETSU. George McIntyre's numbers were good against ETSU. So we don't sort of know, but yeah, we have seen Jake Merklinger now play a little bit last year, a little bit this year. We've seen him in a couple of spring games. And to me, it's to the naked eye, the untrained eye. It's not a coach's eye, but he looks like a guy that could probably be a good starter at an AAC school or a Conference USA or maybe even an ACC, maybe a second chance at a Big 12. He just looks like he needs to step down about a half a level, and that would be sort of his spot, or maybe a different system. I don't know, but I was with the Tennessee fans in wanting to see some McIntyre because I think there's probably more upside there. I think they think that internally, and I think that's just sort of the vibe around things. And I think some of the fans are antsy because they know very well what we're talking about. That it seems like Merklinger probably would not be back next season. And so that means you need to see McIntyre. Everybody wants to get enough of a feel to feel good about next season if McIntyre were the probable starter. Because right now with Merklinger, I don't think any Tennessee fan says, "Yeah, let's roll with him next year." I think that would be a tough sell in the offseason.
I want to provide a little clarity here. You refer to yourself as an untrained eye. I think our listeners, full disclosure, need to know you were an accomplished high school quarterback, so you know the position. Okay, so let's don't dismiss that. You are
led
a
led led West
trained.
Tennessee in interceptions thrown.
Well, you were on it. You probably weren't on a great team, and you had to try and make something happen. And sometimes you tried too hard.
We'll go with that. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Okay, thank you. I but when you look at them, when you look around college football, and you see, well, here's a good example. You don't have to look so far. Ole Miss this year. We go into the season. Ole Miss is replacing a 3-year starter, Jackson Dart, a transfer from Southern Cal. Austin Simmons played a little bit last year as a freshman, showed real skill, came in the opening series against Georgia when Jackson Dart was hurt, looked tremendous, led the Rebels for a touchdown. He comes in as a starter, plays 2 games, he gets a little bunged up, and Ole Miss brings out this quarterback I'd never even heard of, Trinidad Chambliss, just kind of an unusual.
It's a great
Uh,
name.
it's a great name, but to me they don't really go together. Trinidad and Chambliss. I don't know. I think of a Chris Chambliss. I'm dating myself, but the old Yankees first baseman.
Mm-hmm.
Trinidad. Think there was a boxer maybe. Trinidad. But anyway, my point is, this guy comes in and looks like an all SEC quarterback. Now, Ole Miss won't have both those guys next year. I'm just saying, if if I were a college football program, I wouldn't mind going after either one of those guys. They look really good.
I wonder if Josh Heupel and Joey Halsley, the OC quarterbacks coach, I wonder if they have this dream scenario that's a little outdated now of bringing up a quarterback young, starting him young, and having him for at least 2, maybe 3 years. Because that would be the George McIntyre scenario. He starts as a redshirt freshman, grows in the system. He starts as a redshirt freshman, then as a sophomore, then as a junior, and then he's a first-round draft pick. Right, that's the dream scenario. Um, I just feel like certainly the days of Peyton Manning starting 3.5 seasons, that is over. That's not going to happen again. Mostly because a quarterback that good's going to go into the draft. But in the portal era, in the NIL era, you're also just not going to have. I mean, starting for 2 seasons as a quarterback now is that's hard to get to. To have a starter for a full year and then bring him back to start again, that's sort of asking a lot. I just wonder how they feel about the risk and the work it takes to get a quarterback ready and be dependable. Because I mean, they just did a crash course with Joey Aguilar and got him ready in a summer, and it has worked out. Hendon Hooker, though, you have to think they think back, how good it was to bring Hendon Hooker back that next year and say, he was really good in this first year. And man, we are going to add even more to him this second year. I remember talking to Alex Golish, the former OC, and Joey Halsley also after that 2021 season, and how giddy they were to have Hendon Hooker back. And, we did the 100 level course and the 200 level course. We're doing a master's course next year with this guy. And they just spent all season with Hendon Hooker thinking of ways they could add to the offense. And it worked out wonderfully. And I think they would love to have that, where you can just bring a quarterback back and just add more and more to him each year. They're not going to get that with Aguilar. They thought they were going to get it with Nico, and it didn't turn out. I'm sort of arguing both sides of the point here because Hendon was a transfer that they got for multiple years. Nico was a 5-star, and he was here less. He started one game fewer than the transfer. I just think that they want to go younger quarterbacks because that helps them recruit other skill guys, and because they still have this dream scenario of a multi-year starter that they can sort of grow into the system. And I just don't know how realistic that is.
I don't think it is realistic. Another side of this is your budget, your NIL budget. If you're, how much do you want to invest in a quarterback every year to get one of these top-notch quarterbacks in a recruiting class? You're going to have to spend money.
Yeah.
That's money you can't parcel out to the rest of your roster. And I'm talking about proven players. And that gets back to another point I find myself making repeatedly. If I'm going to spend money on somebody, I don't want to guess what he might be at this level. I want to see video of him like a Will Howard at Kansas State if I'm Ohio State. I want to see what he does at college football, another Power 4 league. I want to see these guys, in a similar type situation if I can find them. And that's where I want to put my money. I'm not gambling on those guys. I know what they can do. And I don't care how talented and how much potential these guys have coming out of high school. I still don't know what they're going to do. It's still an unknown.
Yeah, and again, this is timely because Tennessee just wrapped up the biggest portion of their non-conference schedule with the UAB game. Now they go back into SEC play. New Mexico State is the next non-conference game. That's the next likely game. You would see a heavy dose of Merklinger and McIntyre. That's not till November. So we'll probably have to table this discussion till at least then. Because what matters most is this season right now. Tennessee goes to Mississippi State. That's Saturday. It's 4:15 Eastern. If you're in the Central Time Zone, you're going to know that kickoff to be 3:15 on Saturday. be on the SEC network. It'll be in Starkville. I'll be there. John, I mean, the way we look at this, I think, is just Tennessee needs to beat Mississippi State and look good doing it, or maybe not even look good doing it because it's a road game. Win that game, get to the bye week, beat Arkansas, and then get your way to Alabama still with one loss, and that sets up your path to the playoff. Is that sort of where we're seeing this?
Yeah, this is no place to stumble, and neither is the Arkansas game at Neyland Stadium. I think as tough as a road game is, I've watched Mississippi State play, and it's got some talent.
Yeah.
It's much improved over last season. But even last season, Jeff Lebby's first as head coach, it played Georgia 10-point game. It lost to Tennessee by 19. But watching the game, I mean, it wasn't like Tennessee was playing UAB or somebody. I mean, you could see some athletic players there for Mississippi State, and there's more of them this year. Watching it against Northern Illinois, watching it against Arizona State, I think it's going to move the ball on Tennessee. I think Tennessee will need to score a lot of points to put this game away, and I think it can. But I think it will be a really good test for Tennessee on the road, but against a team that plays a very similar offense and against a team with a shaky defense. I think Tennessee is going to pile up the yards and points too, probably.
Yeah, if Tennessee wins, I think it's going to be because there's a flurry of points, and what I mean by that is like 3 touchdowns in a quarter or something like that. Something where they drain the noise out of that stadium. Mississippi State is a lesser talented version of Tennessee right now offensively. Jeff Lebby, runs similar offense, the wide splits. Him and Josh Heupel have been friends and colleagues before. So it's a similar offense. Tennessee's defense will be familiar with it, with the tempo and some of the stuff that they do. They are more talented than they were last year. They've upgraded personnel. So, yeah, it's a team that will probably be able to score points and move the ball in Tennessee because they have on other teams. But I say flurry of points because Mississippi State still has some offensive lulls. They did in the Arizona State game. They won that game, but they had a lull there for a little while and then had to hit a deep ball at the end to win it. They had a bad first half against Northern Illinois, or most of the first half. So you could see Mississippi State being explosive on one hand, but also going 3 or 4 drives and doing nothing. And when those lulls happen, Tennessee needs to jump on it and take over the game. And they certainly have the firepower to do that. So Tennessee needs to be aggressive. They need to try to push the score in the first half. They need to do what they've been doing, which is dominate the first quarter. And you could get this game under control. If this becomes a back and forth where neither defense can really get their heels in, then you could have, first team to 40 wins. And Mississippi State would like to do that. Tennessee wouldn't mind that because they think they have a better offense and better players, and I think they do on both counts. But boy, on the road, if you get into a shootout like that and it's back and forth, you don't want to come down to the fourth quarter. And so Tennessee needs to get this game in hand early, get a road win, and have some momentum going into the bye week. I'll be there in Starkville to cover the game. We'll have all the coverage leading up to the game. I have an interesting story on Josh Heupel and how good or not good he's been on the road this week. That one's going to surprise you. Dispel some myths about Josh Heupel's road record. I'll have that this week. Leading up to the game, we'll have a lot of coverage. Have coverage from Starkville and certainly a whole lot of coverage after the game. Follow our coverage of the Vols at KnoxNews.com. Share this podcast with your fellow UT fans. We'd love for you to subscribe as well, just to make sure you never miss us. And thanks for listening to this episode of The Volunteer State.